Welcome to this chat Jade and I are going to be having on multidimensional health. This is a great video for those looking for a simple way to enhance their vitality, reverse aging, overcome debilitating sensitivities to foods, EMFs, that type of thing, and even access some of the genetic superpowers of your divine potential. It's not going to be a great video if you're looking for the latest health trend or quick fix. Sorry about that, folks. We're not really into the mind-based approaches. That this is really something else. It's beyond that. It's beyond epigenetics. This is about a spirit-based awareness for co-creating our health and actualizing our potential alongside with divine intelligence. This is called metagenetics. And I'm going to turn it over to Jade and ask her if she can share more about this fascinating subject of metagenetics and her experience with it.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks, Dave, for inviting me into this chat. I'm really excited to dive into the subject with you. And I feel like maybe a really good place to start would be what metagenetics is not. So there's actually a huge supplement company that's on the market that's branded Metagenetics, and it's not to be confused with that. But that supplement company, it was based on the understanding that diet and nutrition influences the genome. So it's a hugely successful supplement company. I'm not too sure how personalized they get with that, if they're actually doing genomic testing or DNA testing, but there's that. So if anybody did start Googling what is metagenetics, that might come up.
Totally.
Yeah. How I would describe it, it's the evolution of health, and it's a really it's a co-creative space to be in health. And if we to backtrack just for a little bit to give it some context, it was Dr. Larry Dossey who coined the three eras of health. So there was, era one, which is a more materialistic paradigm. And this is when mainstream medicine became available. And the mindset of the time was very much about genetics being like genetic fatalism, just unfortunate for you. What you get from your parents is what you've got. And I think that locked in to a lot of people's consciousness, the very foundations of health. So it's very body-based, it's very stagnant, it's very locked in. And then in like the mid-1900s, 1950s, and this is where we started to see all of the studies exploding around epigenetics. Yes, we can, in fact, influence the genetic expression, turn our genetics on and off via lifestyle, via nutrition. And this is really like the era of genetic self-determinism. And it was becoming more personal and slightly more empowered. But, people are very fascinating, and still all across the world, there's still all of these reports and cases of these miraculous healing experiences that people are having. Yeah.
I know people like this. This is what my clients tell me, and I've experienced that myself too. So when you're talking about this, I'm not going to dismiss this because this is actually part of my lived reality. It's just so far out of the lived reality of most people because why? They're bought into the genetic model. And of course, our reality shapes itself around our beliefs.
Yeah, 100%. And those become the holding pattern of that which we're interfacing with reality with. And then we're going into a system which is reinforcing that, which is a little bit more authoritarian. And I believe there's almost like an unspoken agreement to what you're buying into. You've already unconsciously agreed to that. Like, for example, if you go to a homeopath, you've unconsciously decided that you are going to be taking homeopathic medicine. Or if you go to allopathic, you have unconsciously made yourself available to receiving a pharmaceutical solution. So that era is really quite data driven, and I don't want to discount data driven, because chemistry is very real, and it's all like blood work and everything. But then it doesn't account for all of those miraculous and really fascinating healing stories that we hear, especially in the space of cancer, which there's just, not always, but a lot of different wonderful, miraculous healings where people are really diving deep into a spiritual and soul journey.
20 years ago, there was a kid who lived in my part of the world. So he lived near Vancouver. He was only about 13 or 14 at the time, but he had this ability to see into people's body and zap cancer. And so people were coming to him all over the world. And he ended up, like his parents ended up basically saying, okay, we can only do so many sessions because he was having these results. And eventually he went on to write a book about this. But this is one of those things that opened my eyes in my early 20s on what's really possible with healing. And at the time, I actually had a health condition that the doctors couldn't tell me anything about. So I had to reverse engineer what was going on there and figuring out a way of what I didn't know it at the time. It was called metagenetics, but that's what I did. And I ended up addressing this thing that was an autoimmune disease that my doctors basically gave me a prescription that I'd never be able to overcome this. So I'm 100% with you. And that's the other thing too, is that we usually get locked into these ideas of cancer being a death sentence or, so-and-so. And not just saying that this is a magic bullet that will take care of it, but when we open ourselves up to new possibilities happening, we let in all I can call it is the light of our higher bodies, of the part of life that's a mystery that can come in, and it can allow the miraculous to actually take place in our lives.
I love the way that you've said that, and leaving room for that, which does enter into the new paradigm, or which is the third era that Larry Dossey coined, which is metagenetics, and that it really embraces the other two eras, and that's where things become more transpersonal or non-local, and it introduces the element of the akash of spirit or of divine, and that's not inseparable from us. It's flowing through us, it's all around us, and that our bodies are indeed multi-dimensional in their makeup. And this can be measured as well. I mean, we have all kinds of wonderful devices available to us these days. One that I'm looking at that's really interesting for me is a quantum resonance machine, where you can start to measure the coherence or the discordant energies that are going on in the different layers of the body. So this is really where we started to understand, wow, okay, our DNA can be influenced by something far greater than us alone. And it's the power of intention. And I've always known this, and I've interacted with this, and I've had different experiences with this through exploring hundreds of different modalities and different healers, because I'm incredibly curious and I like to do my research. And but yeah, this is where we're going into the deeper layers. And I think, if we can backtrack, like, for example, if somebody came to me and they were having chronic anemia, and they've been suffering from anemia for a really long time, or low ferritin levels, and they keep supplementing iron, and they're getting into more and more expensive, but their body can't hold it. And it's just flushing out of the body. So this is where we start to ask the questions about, what is the role of consciousness in our body? Because in era 2 and in holistic health or functional medicine, we're going into the root cause, which is, okay, so you we can actually test for these things, and we can backtrack. So there's a parasite in the gut that is feeding on all of the nutrients, and that whole chemical cascade that makes iron bioavailable to the body. But then the question should be, or could be, why is my body an environment to house parasites? And that's when, parasites, they actually correspond to an energy of anger, and anger is metabolized by the liver. That's when you really look at, the emotional body layers, and we can start to dive into those other layers. Or what is the mental body that is feeding and looping, these anger. So yeah, we could give them, here's an anti-parasite cleanse, and then the parasites come back, and then the low iron comes back. So
what we're talking about here is creating an environment that doesn't allow things like parasites or doesn't allow things like cancer and mold and toxins to actually thrive. And what I've learned in my practice is that by running energy properly through the body takes care of itself. The body's brilliant. We can't even figure out the one process that happens in the brain, and the release of hormones would take the fastest computer 5 trillion years to decode. That's how powerful we are, and we've been talked out of that power. And so when we start to reclaim this and we start to say, hey, I am actually a powerful creator being that can do anything, we start to access some of these higher layers of our genetic potential. And through my work, which I call quantum rebalancing, first of all, I fixed psoriasis over 80% of my upper body. Somebody else had a breakthrough revelation at the age of 72 after 50 years of being on a path about their lives, because now they could see it clearly. And then life rearranges itself to be able to support that. Somebody else had a very painful reproductive organ issue that had been plaguing them that doctors said there's nothing we can do about. With quantum rebalancing, when they ran the energy properly through their body, that pain went away. And so this is the incredible thing, that our body's ability to self-heal comes from being able to run energy properly. But of course, we want to be able to do this safely, because there are ways of blowing ourselves out and that type of thing. So I've always approached this from a very grounded, practical, and safe manner that allows the body to self-heal. I know when we've spoken in the past, you've told me about the amazing benefits of Kundalini and running that energy through the body. And we've seen too, when we've both worked with clients and groups, how when you pair something like quantum rebalancing, which works at some of these thinner, higher levels, with Kundalini, which is sort of also energetic work, that actually the body begins to sort itself out. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the power of Kundalini yoga and how you use it differently in a safe and harmonious manner.
When I started dropping into cleansing initially, and I was hosting the cleansing programs, it was one of the root causes that I was trying to kick out was a discordance in my nervous system, and that was post-traumatic stress. And while working with the herbs and rejuvenating each organ and having a fundamental understanding of which emotions are associated with which part of the body and the chemistry, when I started working with Kundalini in just very a gentle and consistent way and very intentional way, that's when I started to run energy through my body. And Kundalini is really a fascinating modality, and it's a medicinal form of yoga, because we're really working again under the model of metagenetics, understanding that our body it has an internal state of electromagnetism, and there are channels that we can run energy along. And are those channels blocked? Are they stagnant, or are they frozen or in a holding pattern? And so when we're using Kundalini energy or the activations of the Kriyas, we start to sequentially flush out those organs and those channels, and that makes us more available for higher frequencies to come in and flood our body. And when we do, that's when the real healing begins. And sure, we might be moving through the dense layers first. There might be emotion, there might be ancestral, and then there might be the mental holding patterns. But the more energy that we move through in a self-sourced way, in an intentional way, the clearer we become. And the clearer we become, the more we become available to our highest potential and our highest genetic expression. And a part of that is awakening our greater, cognitive ability and our intuition, and our energetic sensitivities come online more so. And if it's done slowly in a very integrated and grounded way, there is no need for Kundalini to be ripping through our system and dismantling our psyche and annihilating our whole reality. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with that happening to a person. Sometimes divine will and consciousness, which is inseparable from us, is actually taking a hold of us and like going, I'm going to shake you up. This is the healing. This is the radical healing that you require to bring you into coherence. And that sometimes can look like a motorcycle accident for people, or 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 a car accident, or
And I was only laughing because in my case, I actually had probably a divine realization from a motorcycle accident, which was perfectly timed, as difficult as it was. And basically, what Jade is saying here is that we don't have to have these experiences you might hear about. And if you're hearing something like this, like what we're talking about, probably you're going to be attracted to a more grounded, sustainable, safe approach. And the way that we work and teach this metagenetics is essentially in a complementary fashion where working with the higher energetic layers through quantum rebalancing matches with the working with the Kundalini energy in the bottom and running life force through the body properly. And then you naturally want to have a diet that supports this. So it allows you to make huge shifts in short periods of time that are sustainable, that will last, and that you won't be running around questioning health or spending thousands of dollars on supplements that you don't need, because you'll know exactly what you need because your body will tell you. And for me, in working this way, I was able to visualize the exact place that I'm living now, which is a beautiful retreat-like environment in Canada. And I was in Indonesia at the time. I saw it and I was able to go for it and able to increase my health and also tap into a purposeful vision by using these type of approaches. So if you're a bit curious from this discussion and you want to experience this for yourself and actually see what these techniques can be like for you, Jade and I have actually created a pay what you want 2-day masterclass where you can dip your toes in and you can actually experience this cutting edge innovation in health that's based on metagenetics. And we're offering it as pay what you want because this information is priceless. So we can't actually set a price for it. It's that near and dear to the work that we do, the things that we live and breathe on a daily basis. And you can, when you go and check out the page, you'll see how it's transformed lives. And even in a short 2-day period, we can communicate to you so much value to get you started on the foundational levels of working in this way. So if you like this and you like what you hear, the link to that is in the description below, and you can go and learn more about it and register for it there. Thank you very much for joining me today. And this is an excellent chat.
thanks, Dave.